Okay, everybody, welcome to Ending the Stigma, A Path to Recovery. I'm your host, Fred Carroll, joined again by life crisis coach Scott H. Silverman. Even though for some reason our names aren't up today, I wonder why. That's got to be a me problem. I bet you it is.
Well, anything technical, it's on your side, Fred. So
there it is, right there. So I just want to tell people that tonight we do have a phone system. And you can see the number below, 888-261-2220. If you want to, it's all going to be audio. You're not going to be on a video screen. But if you want to remain anonymous to me, it's *67 before you dial that number should work for that. But I could also promise you that if you want to make up a name, if you want to give your real name, if you don't, but we're also experimenting tonight, Scott. This is a big experiment because this is a new system that I have that I'm dealing with. So we're going to ask the people right now that anybody that's listening to please let us know the sound quality that's coming through, especially on my end, because I can't tell a damn thing that's going on here. And it's overwhelming, but I strive under pressure, Scott. I'm good under pressure. But how are you? Are you good?
I'm good. Is your phone ringing?
It is ringing. It's you, though.
Yeah, but I just want to make sure. You said if anyone's listening, I'm listening. I wanted to call you.
Well, let's see. So it didn't ring. Can you hear me coming over?
Yeah, I can hear you on the phone. I can hear you on the screen as well. So it looks like it's working.
Okay. Well, and it didn't ring. I just hung it up because I don't want to waste minutes with you.
That's a good point. So tell me, this has been the first week of the time change. You know, how's it been for you?
I've been fine. Today I woke up. I'm dealing with body issues with my aches and pains.
You know what that is? That's AGE.
Yeah, yeah. That's not a new thing either, right?
No, it's very common. A lot of people suffer from it. And it doesn't go away. Well, Facebook users are out there. We got a hey.
Yep, we got a hey, and Andrea says we sound good.
Oh, thanks, Andrea.
But
family to you, I hope.
So now, obviously, since you called and I didn't know it was ringing. Now I got to figure out how to make it ring. The phone is ringing. And
you were worried earlier that you don't know how to turn it down, and now you're saying you can't even hear it, huh?
Obviously, I figured it out now, but now I don't know when it's ringing. So we got a lot to figure out here. But
and I'm comfortable knowing that we have a small audience right now. Pretty much me, you, and Andrea, and somebody else. Otherwise, it could look a little weird that we don't know what we're doing. But everybody's, it's interesting listening to all the podcasters and all the websites I've seen and all the chatter. They said, the best way to get good at doing this is just jump in and get going. And, you've got new instruments, new hardware, new software, new phone number, and, aches and pains. So a lot of stuff you're dealing with, Fred.
Yeah, it's definitely overwhelming. Let's try. That's for me.
There you go. There you go. Is that all your neighbors outside you won't let in the studio?
That's right. They're out in the yard. I got them spread out in the yard.
Must be nice weather.
We are going. So today, let me just transfer over to this real quick, just so people are aware that today we're going to be talking about, certain things that could have trigger warnings and stuff. So we want to make sure that they're aware we're going to be speaking about suicide ideation and suicide, and try to give you some. This is, once again, like every show, these are just introductions because these are things we're going to talk about every week, and we try to do something new every week. And this week we landed on this, so we're going to talk about this. So let me start by saying that the phone line's open. Please call in. Feel free to call in. You're the live test. Challenge us on the fly. It's 888-261-2220. Use *67 if you want to remain anonymous, your number. And remember, if you have an issue or a family member, a loved one, a friend, a neighbor who needs assistance or a success story, please call in with those. Call in with your success stories still. We love to hear those. And you can feel free to write them in the comments, wherever you want to. And tonight's show is going to be about being on the fly. So you better be on tonight. I need you to be on. Can you
And
be on?
if you have some nuggets, or you've actually personally experienced somebody in your family or someone close to you, let us know, because it's something right now. It's a tough topic, and what we like to talk about here is tough topics, and not easy ones, and reduce the stigma. And that's the whole concept of the show, is to be able to let people know that it's okay not to be okay. But what we don't think is okay is not to ask for help, or not for others to help you if they can. So if you've got a thought, you want to share it, this is the place to do it. And as Fred said, give us a call, 888-261-2220. And we will try to answer your question. And if we don't have an answer for you, we'll get one. And if we can redirect or potentially push you in a direction to get some help and support. So, when it comes to this topic, first of all, how often do you hear it discussed? It's very rare, and it is catastrophic when it happens to a family. And what we want to try to do tonight, obviously we're working a few of our bugs out in our show, but we want to know from you, is there something that you think we should know, something you want to talk about, a question you might have? And again, if we can't answer it, we'll get an answer. We have a lot of people out there that are interested in helping drive accurate evidence-based information. And if I'm not mistaken, you have a crisis hotline number, don't you, Fred, that you can share? Is that handy for you to look at?
Yeah, of course. Everything's handy for me to look at one way or the other.
Hasn't left that chair in 11 years. Go ahead.
So, the suicide hotline, which is the most important step to take if you are having any suicide ideations or suicidal thoughts or feeling suicidal, it's 1-800-273-8255. Anyone could call the lifeline, whether they are thinking about suicide or not. Just to get emotional support, you could call. There's no minimum age. You could receive support at any time, even on holidays. If you have a phone, you could call the number, talk to someone. You could also text the number 741-741 and talk to somebody 24 hours a day through text. And from what I actually did some research on, I went down a rabbit hole of the positives and the negatives of the suicide hotline. And the positives obviously outweigh the negatives. There's always going to be some naysayers. And what I was more concerned about was, what is the process? How long are you on hold? Who are you talking to? And I went down this rabbit hole, which is very easy to do by typing Google. And I learned a lot. There are some bugs in the system. Certain hours, obviously, on certain places are busier than others. I would assume major cities are busier than small towns. But overall, it was a positive experience. A lot of the biggest problem is a lot of them assume they're going to get the cops called on them and all those things. Those are the biggest concerns. They're afraid their story's going to get out. And the only way I saw, it's only if they think you're absolutely trying at that moment.
In the act of. And Fred, tell me, did you also, because I understand that if you're a friend or a family member who has someone close to you that you think might be having that thought process or maybe painted into a corner, you can also call and ask questions about what you can do to help that person who might be in that, cloud or that portal or on that train or on the bus or in that pool, so to speak. So you can be able to, ask questions or help calm them down, get them breathing normally, and then help direct them to the appropriate level of, either service or query the appropriate 800 number so you can get the kind of help that you need in your community. Because those national hotlines have, I'm sure, major databases to be able to say, well, if you live in, a small town outside of Kansas City, whatever it might be, call this number, or this is the number locally for you to call. And they have that in their database, I'm sure.
Yeah. And it actually says right on the website, if you are calling about a friend or family member who is in distress, the person on the phone will walk you through how to help and provide resources. So yes,
Awesome.
they will. So listen, it's an important first call. So if you are having those issues, call them, not us. But if you want to talk about it, or you've successfully overcome some suicidal issues, we'd love to hear from you. So once again, dial 888-261-2220. I already memorized it, or I'm
Good for
reading
you.
it at the bottom of the screen. Maybe
Good
I'm
for you.
just that good of an actor.
You know, in our community, we have another resource. It's called 211. Actually, it's a 211 information hotline where you can, make a series of phone calls for different subjects, whether it be transportation or housing, or if you're in a catastrophic event, or even seeking, shelter, if you will, because of one reason or another. And they have our community, and I think 211's in almost every major city and community around the country, and they'll have information on where to go get a shelter, maybe potentially how to access a free ride to a facility if you need it. And they'll also be able to help translate. I understand in San Diego, they have access to over 125 different languages, dialects. So they have people who are on contract, so they can actually connect you with a translator when you call in. So it's really a broad-based, great resource. I know it's in our cities in Los Angeles, San Francisco. I'm in California, and I believe every major city has something like that. It's 211's the number, kind of like the 401 for information, but it's 211. So you can make that phone call as well if you're concerned about calling an 800 number. But the good thing about the 800 numbers, as far as I know, they're all anonymous, and they don't really care about the number that's coming in. They just want to be able to resource for the person who's calling.
Yeah, it's definitely, and 211 is, I believe it's like a 95% United States universal thing. There's very few places that don't have 211, and where they don't have 211, they have another option. It might be
Correct.
It might be 311 or 31, or might be back when you were a kid when you had the party lines. Did you have party lines, Scott? Do you remember
Oh,
party?
you mean you mean when there was multiple people on the phone at the same time?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, as we used to use mobile scanners for that. But yes, party lines. I'm not sure it was in my era. My folks had it, but but I remember there was probably in some of the older areas before they got the equipment upgraded. Party lines were not uncommon. But those days you always wanted, oh, it's kind of fun to listen to. And nowadays you take advantage of the information. I remember my wife and I were monitoring. We had a scanner at one time, and we're listening to somebody make some drug deal on the phone. And actually, I recognized their voice. It was pretty interesting. And I knew who it was because I could tell by their voice and their tone and their tenor, because I knew what they did as well way back in the day. And that was just interestingly funny.
Yeah. So let me get into a few stats that Mel, the science gal, sent us to kick this off. So suicidal ideation is thinking about, considering, or planning suicide. That's what the ideation stands for. So nearly 800,000 people die by suicide every year.
What's that number again?
800,000, according to her stats, which is roughly one death every 40 seconds. And suicide is the second leading cause of death in the world. Second leading.
And how do you have? Did she put a date on that data? Because I'm certain that doesn't cover this last year with COVID, because I know it's on the rise. So, but that is fascinating number. I'm not sure I've heard that number recently, but it's staggering when you think about it.
Yeah, she said she chose to go to 2019 data just so it was studied and maintained, because she's afraid that the current data isn't ready for scientific proof and all that yet. So
and 2019 data was gathered probably through 2017, 2018. So that information could be as old as 3 years old. And I know that there's no way with everything I hear. When what's fascinating is accidental overdoses, usually around opioids, is significant. As we know, it's almost 200 a day now, not accidental per se, but overdoses. But of those, it's really hard to determine if it was accidental or not, unless there was a witness that actually said, Johnny took a pill and he doesn't normally do that, and it was cut with something that killed him, like fentanyl. So a lot of that information doesn't get, merged together, just because it's the data usually comes from the medical examiners, and they're generally the ones who source a lot of that information.
Right. And she said in 2019, 4.8% of adults 18 and older had serious thoughts of suicide. Serotonin has been widely implicated in suicidal ideation and suicide abnormalities. This is where she trips me up because I'm going to try to pronounce words that I have no idea how to pronounce. And I think she does this on purpose, but I'm going to do my best.
Go ahead.
So, linked to suicidal ideation included a decrease in serotonin's metabolite 5-HIAA in the cerebrospinal fluid and increases in 5-HT2A receptors in the platelets. In the brain, abnormalities may differ in different disorders such as depression, schizophrenia, and addiction. So she's giving, she just posted too that I don't do that on purpose. So I think she does. She just wants to see me.
Well, it's probably common language for her on a daily basis, but for the rest of us, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But it's nice to know that there's science around this. I mean, what I'd love to be able to say is, we could have some sort of a tell that you could anticipate, if somebody is on that path. And it's really hard to do because most people are alone when it happens. And it's shocking and surprising sometimes what actually, I don't know if the word has motivated them or caused them to get into that point where they no longer wanted to live and took their own life.
Yeah, they definitely, I guess, and they'd have to go to a doctor to be measured. That's the problem. Right. So because they're obviously, according to Mel's stuff here, Mel, the science gal, the observation that suicidal acts are associated with aggressive and impulsive traits also suggests a serotonin dysfunction, which leads into your thing where maybe we could measure that. Studies have also linked levels of, I have no idea how to say I don't know. I don't even know how to say it. She's fooling me. See, she's doing this on purpose. It's norepinephrine. Norepinephrine, whatever it is. She's going to have to come on and start doing these. And it's metabolites with suicidal ideation. So suicidal patients often have significantly higher levels of these compounds in their cerebrospinal fluid compared with non-suicidal patients. So they have been able to measure the two. Increases in beta Wow, this is live too. See, she's doing this. She's having fun with me, Scott. I don't speak this much nerd.
No, and I wouldn't even try. That's why I'm happy to defer to you. Looks better on you. You're wearing the hat.
Frontal cortex was observed in suicide victims. So there are still many other secondary messengers, receptors, and signal transduction pathways involved in the individual's tendencies to demonstrate suicidal ideation.
Right.
So it is more than anything. I know not a lot of people out there actually understand what Mel's talking about. And she says, next time I'll come on and speak the nerd. But our point on reading it, even though I read it very poorly, is to show you that science does exist for these things. So they are trying to at least get the data and move forward to a solution of some sort that maybe it's got to help. It can't harm to have the data. And it's alarming.
And I actually have never really read a study, but I'm sure there is one that talks about certain classifications, because I know, because of populations I serve, that the veteran population has a very high suicide rate. First responders, very high as well. High stress jobs like that, and it's systemic in some industries, like first responders, and you never really hear exactly what goes on with the story. It's just, and it's not always reported publicly. Families don't want to put that out there, but it is something that takes place, and it's a scary thing. And and I personally, I know I've shared this before. I went through a traumatic event myself personally with wanting to, end my own life. So I understand, not for anybody else but myself, the pain that I was in emotionally and how I felt personally. But without divine intervention, I wouldn't have been here. I wouldn't be here today. So I'm very empathetic towards people who suffer from the inability to facilitate those kind of feelings and reach out for help. I mean, there was we shared this before about that pilot in the UK a few years ago that had some major mental health issues, depression, anxiety. I'm just giving a couple examples. And he took his own life. And I don't know if there was a note that was left or someone who knew him and he talked about it. And he just didn't want to let his fellow comrades down. And he didn't want to be stuck with the stigma of how he was feeling. So unfortunately, without getting help, what his end path was taking his own life. And when you hear stories like that, it's so sad that we can't provide a better platform for people to reach out and know that there's hope and help, and know that they can make a phone call, and know that there's experts out there that can really help you, deal with and process whatever it might be, And we're not going to put a bunch of labels on things today, just to know that we're talking about it so others will talk about it. And we hope that if one person gets the message tonight and helps a family member or a friend, or potentially makes a phone call for somebody, that maybe a life could be saved and a whole family won't be impacted by the particular outcome of suicide, because it's a very difficult one.
Yeah. So I did during my research, I came across 6 questions you could ask a loved one to help screen for suicide risk. Now, I'll tell you, this is a woman named, trying to find her name. She's a doctor. She's a legitimate doctor. She's at the University of Florida, where she practices. And what she says is the base rate for suicides among young ages 12 to 17 have been about 5 per 100,000 for many years. That's what it's been at for many years, below the base national rate of 13 per 100,000. However, in the year 2017, that rate of completed suicides increased to 27 per 100,000. And for 2018, they were at a pace that will likely equal 2017. And
so five times greater in less than a year and a half, if I did the math right on that.
Right. And, her goal in writing this article was, in her words, curbing a heartbreaking trend. So she's come up with 6 questions that you could ask, and I could pop them up here and show them that way. Let me remove our names there. But so the first one that she says is, you ask them, have you wished you were dead or wished you could go to sleep and not wake up? And I guess, I mean, you went through the ideation and the attempt. Now, so obviously you have. So your answer to that was yes. And it's still yes, regardless. It's yes. So have you actually had any thoughts about killing yourself? And yours would be yes. And it says here, if the loved one answers yes to question 2, you have to ask them 3, 4, 5, and 6. But if the person answers no to question 2, just go directly to question 6. Now, I could put this up on social media, on wherever you're watching, and you could read through it. You could also find it at theconversation.com is where I found it. 6 questions you could ask a loved one is what it's entitled. But you could see 3 is, have you thought about how you might do this? So I see what her process is. She's trying to get the person, first of all, to talk. It's opening the person up. And she also mentioned that she's aware a lot of people are going to answer, vague, like, I don't remember. And you got to accept those answers almost as yeses. They're like deflections. So I think it's important. I guess it's one of those things that when you're dealing with suicide, we can't just leave it up to the person who's suicidal, who's having the idea. The support system has to get involved, sometimes forcefully. We have to let them know we're here. So that's what me and you are at this point. That's what our goal is, to be somebody that'll listen without, stigmatizing them.
Yep.
And, it's definitely it's a difficult thing to talk about. It's a trigger for a lot of people. And it's controversial also, because I'm sure there's another mental health doctor that will tell us those 6 questions aren't going to solve the problem. It's until it's weighed out and stuff. But I thought it was, when I read about it, I thought what she was saying made a lot of sense to me in my thing. So
right. And I can't visualize a family sitting around dinner going, "Hey, Johnny, I have a couple questions for you based on some behavior I've observed the last couple of days," and with a clipboard, sit there and kind of check off the questions. So just again, if you sense something's happening, getting education, researching hotlines, and just sometimes sitting with someone and listening to what's going on, and not ask the direct question, because it's like we're talking to somebody, do you think you have a drinking problem? Because most people who suffer from self-medication and high levels of addiction, if you will, or suffer from the disease of addiction, it's a disease of denial. And most people aren't going to tell you, by the way, I'm going for a walk on Saturday and I thought a lot about Sunday, and maybe I might take my life on Monday if Sunday doesn't go the way I want. It doesn't usually come out as a logical conversation like that, but just being able to know that you're not alone with it, and you can make a phone call and reach out, and push comes to shove, if you're in the throes of it, 911 can always be and maybe there's somebody, I'm sure there's somebody trained at the other end of that phone that maybe could talk to them. So there's always a way, and I think that's so important for people to understand that you don't throw your arms up and leave the house and go, "There's nothing more I can do." Yeah, there is something you can do, and especially with young people, it's hard. It really is. But there is help.
Yeah. But it's definitely one of those things. It's just it's a hard conversation. There's no easy conversations with your children to begin with. Now, like you were saying, this isn't something you ask little Johnny while you're sitting at the table, but these are questions you ask once you recognize something's wrong with little Johnny, and you need to go to his bedroom. You need to get him maybe out in the backyard playing catch, whatever the reason, whatever way is the most comfortable. An interaction, one-on-one. This isn't a dinner table conversation, but I'm sure there's families out there that can talk about this at the dinner table, like me and you talk about this, how open we are about it.
Well, and I got to tell you, this is not a comfortable subject for me, and I deal with families in crisis all the time. And when someone's basically describing what's going on with their loved one, they're on this path, and it's not an easy topic. I mean, I can talk about substance use disorders, I can talk about addiction, I can talk about gambling, sex addiction, food, but this topic, even for me personally, I mean, I have a strong weight on my heart now just talking about it, because it's so complicated to try to understand why someone would actually do something like this when you hear about it. And, even if there's a picture painted for somebody to say, well, gee, they had this going on and that going on, job loss, relationship blow up, all those things happen to a lot of us over life. But when it's coming crashing down and it's your life that's happening right now and it's flashing in front of you, it's real hard to take a deep breath and assess. So sometimes just, say, hey, you know what? You look like you need a hug. I actually have a story about a guy. He was a DEA agent. He's participated in my new book. I won't use his name, but he was on a panel one day talking about what was going on with cross-border drug distribution, and how the war on drugs wasn't working and how frustrating it was. And I listened to him describe, the U.S. attorney was there, that someone from the district attorney's office, and they were basically contemporizing information for this large group of people about what was happening, here in San Diego. We're a border town, obviously. And he was so upset about describing how catastrophic it was living with it every day. So after his presentation, I went up. I didn't know who he was. I knew who he was. I've seen him, but I've never met him. Shook his hand and I said, "Would you like a hug?" And he took it, and not that he had any thoughts, but just when someone's emoting like that, sometimes just giving them a hug, sometimes just letting them know, hey, I hear what you're saying. I can't really get inside your head. And, in my head, based on what I'm hearing, I'm saying, I don't want to be in your head anyway, but guess what? let's sit down and talk about it. Because what's that saying? I'd rather listen to somebody piss and moan and complain for an hour than go to their funeral for 20 minutes.
Right. And I don't know. It's just like you're a hug touch guy, and I'm obviously not as emotionally evolved as you.
What do you mean what do you mean you're obviously not? We don't I have not seen that yet, but you're obviously strapped to your seat by yourself right now, as far as we know, except for that crowd on the other side of the camera.
Yeah. Well, I do want to tell you one thing, because I think
we'll get you there.
Yeah. So I did make a big mistake the other night, and I'll talk about it live, and I won't go into too many details during a live show. And the only reason I'm telling this is to show people that you can make a mistake, admit the mistake, apologize for the mistake, and still carry on. It's okay to be human, to make these mistakes. I obviously have a show called Ending the Stigma, and I placed stigmas on somebody in a live event the other day and got called out on it live on the air. And then afterwards spoke with the person who was upset about it and hammered it out. Then I went back, reflected back to it, saw what I did. So what I did was I was reviewing a TV show, and I knew in my head what I was trying to say. I worded it poorly and made it came off as racist in a sense. It had a racism value to it. It wasn't racist per se. I didn't use any of the verbiage or anything. But what I was saying was, I was trying to say that the ethnicity of the children on the show didn't appear to match the parents that they supposedly have. Okay. But the way I worded it, I made it about the color of the kids. So the person was brave enough, not brave, I don't know if it takes bravery, but they called me out. Now, it's a comedy show, it's a live show, but I realized that I didn't know I was wrong at the time. Let's put it that way. I didn't recognize that I was just sounding like a curmudgeon old man at the time. Partial to me is trying to be funny. Sometimes comedy has a way. And then Jennifer and I talked about this on our show last night, and she mentioned, and I thought it was interesting how she said it, was sometimes when you try to push your argument even further to argue your thing, you unintentionally make it worse. Instead, and that goes back to your point, to just listen. You got to listen to what the other person is saying and respect what they're saying, right or wrong. And we agreed to disagree, me and the other guy, because I did have certain issues with it, but it wasn't what I was trying to say. So the only reason I tell that story is to let people know, even me with this show, mess up. I make mistakes.
Well, if you're following any national news, there's a lot of congressional leaders right now, legislative leaders that are stepping in it too. I mean, they're just, I don't, this is not a political statement, but that, I can't remember who it was said it the other day, but everyone will know if they're watching the news about, finding a tall tree and a long rope in Texas. I mean, and that kind of statement, just, and this was, I guess, an older guy, and this is one of the goofy things that people maybe used to say. And, the term PC, political correctness. And I think it's important to be honest and heartfelt, but it's also important to be sensitive, caring, and empathetic, knowing that what you're about to say potentially could hurt somebody else. And to your point, if it's accidental and it isn't systemic, to your point, if you're able to make the amends, you make the correction, and look, it's a learning opportunity. I mean, most of us today, it's hard. If you're going to talk for 10 or 15 minutes about any sensitive subject, you're bound to hit some triggers for people. And it may have nothing to do with anything other than your truth, but their truth is they heard that in a way that was not only offensive to them, but also causes anger and resentment. And I think our level of sensitivity for others is really hard. So if you don't know what, my attitude, if you don't know what to say, just listen. But you're in a position, you've got a microphone and you've got a platform, and people are going to challenge you. I mean, the more you get out there, the more people are going to give you their feedback, whether you like it or not. But that's, part of the public figures run into that all the time. They spend half their day sometimes figuring out how to respond to queries from their constituents.
And being on a comedy format doesn't help either, because now you're just grasping. In comedy, personally, what I do is, comedy to me is supposed to cross some lines and stuff. It's just how smartly you could cross those lines. So that's a personal thing on my end. But I'm worried about comedy. We talked about that last night on the show too. I'm worried about the future of comedy, because there is some things are getting a little too oversensitive. Like I'm not worried about cartoons, for instance. Cartoons are not what I see as a problem. But then you turn on the Grammy Awards and you see these girls in lingerie singing that WAP song, but yet it's okay at 8:00 at night to do this. I would think the music is affecting people more than a cartoon character, but we won't talk about that because we're talking about suicide ideation. But I wanted to tell my story because I thought it was important, and I thought it at least will show a humanity side, that it's okay, and let other people know that it's okay to get on a microphone and say you made a mistake and you were wrong. You don't have to suffer your whole life. You don't have to condemn yourself. If you're not really thinking those things, learn to word yourself better, get better at it, apologize. All those things work. And sometimes they don't, but overall, for your own mentality, you're allowed to make mistakes. It's okay.
Well, and when people talk today, that old saying, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Because I think a lot of people, we're all sensitive right now, and for just causes. So the idea is, if you're hearing from something from somebody, try to understand as best you can, so you're not the one who suffers from their words. I mean, you don't let them rent space in your head. And if they've offended you in some way, social media today, let them know, or talk to somebody about it. Because a lot of those things that we internalize sometimes can be, I call them little volcanoes that over time can erupt and trigger things like that takes place with the human mind, body, and soul. So that's why practicing, ways to relax, working on meditation, mindfulness itself, going for walks, praying, whatever you do, journaling, but each day, if you do things like that, you're going to improve the way you feel, you're going to improve the way you look at life, and you're not going to let that negative energy, into your space. Because if you do, look, if you watch the news this last year, I mean, PTSD has erupted like we've never seen before, because of what's gone on in the news and the way people are talking to each other and support. And I just heard today, was it one third of the military have opted not to take vaccinations? Okay. But, the science says that if you don't get a vaccination, just like the flu, and I postponed taking the flu shot for years, and I take it now, that you run the risk of potentially getting exposed to the virus. So it's interesting when because people are always going to have difference of opinions. We're always going to disagree. And, I like that saying I said earlier, it's okay to not be okay with something, but rather than let it beat you up or tear you down, think about that and put on your catcher's mitt and catch it, and maybe throw it to the ground, so it isn't something that eats away at you. Because that's, one of the things I learned a long time ago, the only thing I can control is my attitude. That's it. Yeah. Everything else, I have to find a way to process one way or another, because it's going to come at you if you're going to watch the news, listen to the radio, read the newspaper, talk to people. You're going to hear the comments. And what's going on right now in this country, with the AAPI community, it's just horrible. And what just took place recently in Atlanta is just horrible. And what we saw on was it 6th of January? Those things are just, they're talking about in the news. And was it CNN? I heard once was created for people who have Alzheimer's, because they repeat the news every 15 minutes. So it doesn't matter when you tune in, you're going to hear it. And most news, it's not really real positive, unfortunately. So We'll try to stay upbeat with our themes that we do here. So what else you got, Fred?
Well, that's basically all I got. But what I do want is somebody to call in right now. I want one of my friends out there, and I know people are listening. I sent a text to Andrea just now, told Andrea to call because I want to hear what it sounds like when somebody calls. That's not Scott, because then it just repeats the pattern. So let's give it a few more minutes. Anybody, I don't care if you call in, just say hi.
Yeah, could be someone that likes you, doesn't like you.
Yeah.
Somebody you think, if you think I owe you money, call me. Let's talk about it right now.
I used to get that. Out there listening. All we need is somebody to call in so we could test this out, so I could get better at it.
Let's dare them, Fred. Let's dare somebody to make that phone call.
I dare somebody. I double dare somebody. Let's see if I can get somebody to call. 888-261-2220. Your name doesn't need to be mentioned. It's just your voice. All I want to hear is you say, hi, great show. How are you? That's all we want to hear. That's it. But, we're going to, somebody's saying, what's the number? Look on the bottom of the screen, 888-261-2220. Somebody's calling in right now. Let's see what happens. Hello, you're on the air. Can you hear us? Uh-oh, maybe not.
I can hear you.
Yeah, can you hear them, Scott? Good?
I just barely. Yep, go ahead.
Go ahead, caller. How are you?
Hey, Fred. I'm just calling to see if it sounds good or not. I'm just trying to help out.
Yeah, it sounds good on my end. I don't know about Scott's. Can you hear him good, Scott?
Yeah, I can hear him okay. It sounds like caller waiting. You've got another call coming in, Fred.
Yeah, another call. Okay, caller, let me take this next call. Thank you for calling. Welcome to Ending the Stigma. You're on the air.
Hi, is this Jack? Scott, no, I got off.
How are you?
I was gonna say Jeff.
Yeah, it's Scott and Fred.
No, Fred.
Yep, Scott.
That's close enough.
Oh,
yeah.
This is anonymous. Oh,
that's okay. Everything's anonymous on our show. Say that again?
Yeah, you were talking. Is my connection good?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. You were talking about suicide earlier, and that's very much on my heart. That's real with me. I almost took myself out multiple times. Very grateful that I didn't, because God had a purpose for me, my higher power. But people just don't understand it. The PTSD is going to lead to that down the road, and I'm very fearful of that. To hear the numbers are skyrocketing, it's not by happenstance or it doesn't surprise me, because it's a direct correlation when people experience trauma, especially on a huge level like we have nationally, not just individually by their circumstances. The ripple effect, like people need to be more compassionate of others, and the services need to get better, or we're going to see a tidal wave that nobody can even dream of.
Yeah,
so
it's definitely a problem.
I'm glad I'm here. Yeah, but there is strength and hope. Like, it's never the answer. It's, like they say, the permanent solution to a temporary problem. And that's so true. The problem may seem permanent at the time. It often does. But you got to reach out. Like, I implore everybody that's going through that. Reach out. Reach out to the suicide prevention hotline. Reach out to a friend. Just tell somebody, I need to talk. And just talk to them. Be real with them.
Yeah, we agree. And okay, well, I hope everything works out, and you're doing well now.
Oh yeah, no, I'm doing great. I mean, I still struggle with depression, just because that's kind of how I'm wired. But I have the tools now to counter that with what's the reality. When my mind starts spinning, I can ground myself in what really happened. What am I interpreting as happened, and what really happened? Or be the good friend. What would a friend tell me in this situation? You have the dialectical ability to use the tool here again.
Okay, well, we definitely thank you for the call, and it's going to help us greatly. And furthering the platform, but your message is well received, and we wish you nothing but luck. And call in again next week. We're on every Friday.
Yep. Thanks for the call. That's great.
Yeah,
It sounds like you're doing really well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, and you know your phone works now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
now I know it
Have
works.
a good night.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Fred.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye.
See you later.
Hello, this is Ending the Stigma.
Hello.
Oh, it's
How are you?
Is this Andrea? Am I allowed to say? Am I allowed to say that or no?
Yes, you can.
No, this is Andrea. I had Andrea call, and she's my partner in another business that I do, and I wanted somebody to test, but we already got 2 other calls, so you're late. You're late, Andrea.
Well, I've been watching you. Remember, I'm the one that typed in and said you sounded good. Okay, so I've been watching. I'm sorry I was late calling.
Well, let me see how Scott. So you could hear the phone calls good.
Yep.
Yeah.
Don't bust your chops for making the effort, because that's real important. You know, she did that. That was great. Thank you.
Well, Andrea wouldn't know it was me if I wasn't busting her chops. She would be thinking I'm an imposter.
Exactly. Yes, we have a love-hate relationship. A lot of hate dust.
Yeah. It's mostly
Well, and we're trying to work on his love side. So let's you know, they say you can love everybody, but sometimes you don't have to like them.
That's true.
Okay, Andrea.
That's
Thanks for
true.
calling. We're gonna end the show.
All right.
Thanks.
I'll go away.
Goodbye.
All right.
Okay, so we got 3 phone calls.
Awesome.
Did it? So on your end, it did seem satisfactory.
Yeah.
The volume of them.
Got some echo going, but you can work on that. But no, obviously the phone line works, and you know the number works, and you know people are listening, and we'll pre-promote a little bit more effectively, and you know hopefully have people waiting to talk with us when we get started next. And Friday's going to be our time, 6 p.m. on the West Coast and 9 p.m. on the East Coast, unless we decide to move it on a different change. But we'll promote it as well on social media.
6 p.m. on the West Coast, 9 p.m. on the Best Coast.
There you go. Whatever it takes to, you know, allow you to put your head in the pillow and try not to worry too much.
Okay, everybody. So that's going to end the show. Like I said, we only touched on some suicide ideation. We'll always discuss suicide because it ties into so much mental health, from drug addiction, alcoholism, all the addictions that are out there, abuse, everything that has to do with mental health. It all ties together. So we'll be talking further about these things, and that's it. You got anything to say, Scott?
Just, you know what? If you forgot which number to call, you can always Google me, Scott H. Silverman, call me directly, 619-993-2738, your crisis coach and family navigator. And if there's anything I can do to help, I'm here. And if no one's told you they love you today, I love you today.
And that's going to end the show. So nice to see you again, Scott. And
good seeing you, Fred.
Have everybody be good.